Hello, everyone. Today we are continuing with Unit 6.3, and today we're going to talk about multiplying. So multiplying radical expressions. To multiply two radical expressions with different radicands is similar to multiplying binomials. So when we're multiplying, I use double distribution. So if I'm multiplying like number 1, I don't need to do that. What I can do is the numbers on the outside of the radical, 3 times 5, I can multiply those. And the ones on the inside, radical 6 and radical 2, I multiply those. So 3 times 5 is 15. Radical 6 times radical 2 is radical 12. Now I need to make sure if I'm simplified. Well, 12 has a perfect square factor of 4. So this is 15, radical 4, radical 3, square root of 4 is 2. So it's 15 times 2, radical 3. 15 times 2 is 30, radical 3. So it's 30 radical 3. So when I have things with plus or minus signs inside my parentheses, I have to do this idea that's called double distribute. So what that means is I'm going to take my first term, 3 radical 2, I'm going to multiply it by the second parentheses using the distributive property. Then I take the second term, the negative 2 radical 5, and I multiply it by the second set of parentheses by doing double distributing. So when I multiply 3 radical 2 times 4 radical 20, that gives me 12 radical 40 because I multiply the 3 times 4 and the 2 times 20. Inside by inside, outside by outside. Then I do 3 radical 2 times radical 8. So that's plus 3 radical 16. Now I'm going to take the minus 2 radical 5. I'm going to multiply it by the second parentheses. So negative 2 radical 5 times 4 radical 2 is negative 8 radical 100. Inside by inside, outside by outside. And then negative 2 radical 5 times radical 8 is negative 2 radical 40. Now I need to simplify everything to see if I can combine like terms. So 40 has a perfect square factor of 4. So that's 12 times radical 4 times radical 10. Plus 16 is a perfect square. So that's 3 times 4. Minus 100 is a perfect square. So that's 8 times 10. Minus 2. 40 again has a perfect square factor of 4 radical 10. Radical 4 radical 10. So perfect square factor of 4 is 2, square root of 4 is 2. So that's 12 times 2 radical 10. Plus 3 times 4 is 12. Minus 8 times 10 is 80. Minus 2, square root of 4 is 2. So that's 2 times 2 radical 10. I'm going to multiply 12 times 2 is 24 radical 10 plus 12 minus 80. 2 times 2 is minus 4 radical 10. Now I combine my like terms. So my like terms, if I have the same radical, I can add those. So 24 minus 4 is 20. So that's 20 radical 10. And 12 and negative 80 is negative 68. So let's try some like the first problem. So again, when they're both underneath the radical, I can just multiply those. So that's radical 28. And then I need simplify. So 28 has a perfect square factor of 4. So that's radical 4 times radical 7. Square root of 4 is 2. So that's 2 radical 7. Number 2. I can rearrange that, so I'm going to multiply 2/3 times 9, because those are both on the outside, and 24 times 3, because those are both on the inside. 2/3 times 9 is 6. Then 24 times 3 is 72. Now I need to think, does 72 have any perfect square factors? It does, 36. So this is 6 times radical 36 times radical 2. Square root of 36 is 6, so it's 6 times 6, radical 2. So my final answer is 36 radical 2. All right, so what does it mean when I square something? That means 2 radical 3 times 2 radical 3, because I'm squaring the whole parentheses. So again, outside by outside, inside by inside. 2 times 2 is 4. Radical 3 times radical 3 is radical 9. Well, the square root of 9 is 3, so that's 12. Or you can realize that whenever I multiply a radical by itself, I get just the number on the inside. So for number 4, again, I'm squaring that. So it's 3 radical 6 times 3 radical 6. So 3 times 3 is 9. Radical 6 times radical 6 is 6, so it's 9 times 6, which is 54. Number 5, here I need to distribute. So I do 2 times radical 3, so that's 2 radical 3, plus 2 times 4 radical 5, which is 8 radical 5. Those are both simplified, so I'm done. Number 6, radical 6 times radical 3 is radical 18, minus radical 6 times radical 6 is 6, so that's 2 times 6. Here I need to simplify. 18 has a perfect square factor of 9, so it's radical 9 radical 2, which is 3 radical 2, minus 2 times 6 is 12. So the answer is 3 radical 2 minus 12. I want you to pause and try 7 and 8. So again, on 7, I distribute. So radical 5 times radical 5 is 5, minus radical 5 times radical 2 is radical 10. 8, I distribute. Radical 2 times 3 radical 7 is 3 radical 14, plus radical 2 times 2 radical 5 is 2 radical 10. I can't simplify 14 or 10, so I'm done. Number 9, this is where I have to do my double distribute. So I do 2 times 2, which is 4, 2 times 4 radical 2, which is plus 8 radical 2. Then I distribute my negative 4 radical 2 times 2 is negative 8 radical 2. Negative 4 radical 2 times 4 radical 2 is negative 16 times 2, because radical 2 times radical 2 is 2. Now, this is 4. I can combine 8 radical 2 and minus 8 radical 2. Those equal 0. So it's 4 minus 32, which is negative 28. That was kind of interesting. So number 10, remember I cannot just square each thing because there's a plus sign there. So I need to do radical 3 plus radical 6 times radical 3 plus radical 6. And I double distribute. So radical 3 times radical 3 is 3, plus radical 3 times radical 6 is radical 18. Then I distribute the next number. So I do radical 6 times radical 3 is radical 18. And radical 6 times radical 6 is 6. Radical 18 I can simplify to be radical 9 times radical 2. I can do that with the other radical 18 as well. And the square root of 9 is 3. So it's 3 radical 2 plus 3 radical 2 plus 6. Combine like terms, and it's 9 plus 6 radical 2. So we're going to end our video there today, and we will do number 11 and 12 together tomorrow in class. If you have any questions, please ask.